Hi everyone and welcome to another segment of We Nerd. My name is Cassie. Thank you so much for logging in to our channel and liking and sharing and subscribing to all that I've done so far. I sincerely appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, and I can't even tell you how much it means to me. Honestly, I'm also very shocked. It's beyond words. But today I'm going to be talking about being a first generation student person of color who attends predominantly white institutions. Now, a first generation student is someone whose parents did not attend college and did not earn a degree. So for my family, not only am I a first generation student, for my extended family, I am the first one born in the United States of America. When I was little, I didn't know how, but I knew that meant I couldn't just live any type of life. My life had to mean something. It had to have value. I had to do extraordinary things because, again, maybe this sounds conceited. I am. I'm not a very conceited person, but when it comes to my family, my mom's side family specifically, I'm very, very conceited. I think they're the greatest people on earth. I think I can do no wrong. But they were brilliant people, and they've done so much to make sure that they had come over here and then my parents themselves came over here, and I had to make it worthwhile. It had to mean something. And I didn't know how I was going to make it mean something. I didn't know how I was going to make it worthwhile, but I just knew I had to do that. As I went through school, I went to schools, my elementary, middle school, and high school life, where West Indians and East Indians were the most dominant demographic. They were. We were. I went to school with kids who they brought their cultural foods to the cafeteria. We all knew what it was. Some of us even shared. We were like, yo, like pass that pori, like ASAP. Do you have tamarind sauce with it? Like, I need it. I never went to a school where I had to hide my culture or be ashamed of it. Even our school dances, our school organizers always hired DJs and made sure they included music from the diverse backgrounds that all the students were there. I grew up learning about reggaeton, about merengue, about bachata from my friends as well, because of the school I went to. They learned about Indian music, they learned about reggae, they learned about dance hall, they learned about chutney and soca, because we all went to school like that. And even my middle school, I have to say, was phenomenal with this. We had cultural extravaganza where everybody's culture was showcased through dance, through singing, just through performing arts. And it was so much fun. I participated in that 2 years when I was in 2 years when I was in middle school, both 7th and 8th grade. And it was such a good time, but I didn't realize that was an exception. That wasn't the rule. That's not how the rest of America worked. And then I went to St. John's University, and I learned that I was a minority. I, as a West Indian woman, is and was a minority at St. John's University. I didn't realize that. And many people laugh. Many people will be like, okay, you were very ignorant. But I grew up in a neighborhood where everyone knew about West Indians. People always knew what we were about, had an idea of what we were about, had known people who were West Indian. I never grew up having to explain to people my cultural background. And then here I am sitting in St. John's. In one of my first classes, we have to do those regular icebreakers. And one of my colleagues literally tapped me on the shoulder and was like, can I ask you something? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And she's like, where do you go tanning? I was like, I don't tan. This is my natural color. She was like, no, it's not. It's so nice and even. I'm just like, no, this is my natural skin tone. She had never seen someone of my skin tone. She didn't understand that there were people out there who can have my skin tone. And that was also very shocking to me. But again, she wasn't rude about it. She wasn't very haughty about it. So I was like, okay, like, I'll explain to you. You clearly just arrived in New York City and came here for college. Kudos, but you need to understand a few things before you get punched on the subway. So I broke it down to her. But that was a very interesting moment in my life. Another one happened when I was closer to senior year. And this actually came from another woman of color who her cultural background was Indian, East Indian. And she told me I did not have the right to be identifying myself as a West Indian. That was the first time in my entire life I had heard that. And I was taken aback because, first of all, I considered this woman a friend of mine. And here she was telling me that how I've identified myself at the time for the past 20 years was incorrect. And I told her, I'm like, the difference between my family and your family is a boat. It was not my fault. It was not my ancestors' fault that they were shoved onto boats and brought to different parts of the New World to help serve. That was not their fault. So why am I wrong for identifying as a West Indian? That's exactly how I identify. I have identified like that, and I will continue identifying as that. A few minutes later, she came out and she was like, I'm sorry that you feel that way. That was not an apology. Absolutely not. But I was like, all right, you know what? Whatever. Like, I'm done with this conversation and I'm absolutely done with you. And up to now, like, I have not spoken to her. I don't really want to, because you can't tell me how I identify. This is how I was brought up. As a first generation student, I also did work full-time, go to school full-time. I also volunteered, as I mentioned in my previous videos, at the United Nations. And that is something that is very common that I saw with first generation students. We always have to battle both financial and social difficulties blending in. When I was in St. John's University, I had a core group of friends, predominantly Caribbean individuals, who I stuck with my entire 4 years of college. With them, I can play any music I want, and I did. So we had a building at St. John's University called DAC, and we would go by the hangout area with pool tables. So we would shoot pool, we'd be blasting our type of music, it didn't even matter, right? And then we would even bring dominoes, and we played like serious Caribbean style dominoes, like knocking table, almost breaking it. It was like problem, but I just stuck to them my whole 4 years. As I grew up, I then also, as I mentioned before, I did my master's at Nottingham in the UK. When I went there, I was the only West Indian woman. And I had to explain to my peers exactly my cultural background. In England, I was more prepared for it. I wasn't taken aback because I figured, especially being in Nottingham, it's the Midlands. It's not like it's London where there's a lot more West Indians. So I wasn't as taken aback. I'm like, okay, yeah, I figured. I'm like, okay, I'll explain that to you. I have no issues. And I had my peers and my friends. They were just so fascinated with it. They wanted to learn more. They wanted to learn so much more. And I love that. They weren't taken aback. They weren't judging. There were a lot of East Asians as well on that course that I took. They were British, so they were British Asians, but none of them said that I was wrong for identifying as a West Indian woman. And finally, now I'm here in Virginia, where I'm studying at Old Dominion University, and that is in and of itself a whole new experience. I never met both Black or white people who identify themselves as just American. So the Black people that I interacted with when I was younger and that I still have as friends, they are like, we're Haitian, we're Jamaican, we're Dominican, like none of them identify as American. And then I came to Virginia and so many people just identify as American. When I say I'm Guyanese American, they start laughing because they're like, no, you're just American. I'm like, no, I'm not. I grew up in a household where I understood I live in America, but I have Guyanese parents. I was raised in a very much a Guyanese household in a Guyanese way. So identifying as American, I just knew that was what my passport was. That's what my nationality is. But that's not, I don't know what it means to feel like you're American. I just live in America. And even in England, nobody says that I was Guyanese American. They said I'm American. And I was like, no, I am a Guyanese American. I'm specifically a New Yorker. They're like, you're just American. I'm like, grim. But I didn't. And even up to now, I don't know what that fully means. Like, what does someone mean when you're just American? For me, it's simply that I was born here and I was raised here in this country. And I am so grateful and blessed that I was, because the type of mentality I have, the things that I know I love to do, living in Guyana would have been a struggle for me. It really would. It would have been. But I was blessed to have parents who fought to make sure that not only were they here, but they'll raise their family here. And both me and my sister were born in America. And I've gotten to learn about what exactly those benefits are, being, especially when I was abroad. So as an American, I could have easily, all I have to do is apply. And that's how they got my credentials, simply like applying to any American school. When I was there, I had roommates from other countries. And one of the countries, she was born in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and she was like, I had to provide financials. I had to show them that I had X amount of money in my bank account. And I'm like, I just have to apply. I don't know what this means. I don't know. And then even when she wanted to travel around Europe, I would just pick up myself on a weekend and just choose a country and go. She had to apply for the visa. Many times she has to go into an interview for that visa just to visit for a weekend. And I also understood, that was when I fully really understood the privilege of what it meant to have a blue passport, or what it meant to have an American passport. At that point, I really didn't know. I just thought it was something that I had, that I was blessed with. And I also understand that it's something that I cannot take for granted. The same way, being a first generation woman of color, thanks to my parents, I can't let that opportunity pass me by, which is part of the reason why I couldn't just be satisfied with a bachelor's or a master's. There were and always would be people who, in my field, who would have had a higher degree than me. And that to me was unacceptable. My mom, she had always told me, if you can be great, don't settle for being good. If I had just settled for a master's, that's all I would be, is good. But studying and going on to earn my PhD, even if I'm not the greatest person, as far as that is concerned, that is making me great. And as an ode to my parents, who, because of them, I have everything, I've been able to have these experiences. My father obviously had his last name, but I am also blessed to have my mom's name. So on all my degrees, I make sure that it says my full name, Cassandra Priya Jagrup. It doesn't just say Cassandra Jagrup, because my name will always have and be my father's last name until I get married, but my mom is my middle name, and you can choose whether or not you would want your middle name on it. But I always will make sure that it has her name on it, because both of them are the reason I'm able to go through these processes and be as successful as I am. And again, being a first generation woman of color at predominantly white institutions are not always the easiest situations. There are so many more examples, but I've just tried to condense it as a nutshell as much as possible. But I definitely have learned that as much as there are downs, there are ups as well. You just have to learn how to identify it. And I am blessed that I have had family and friends who always keep me grounded, even if I feel like the ground is slipping from underneath my feet. And with that, thank you guys so much for joining in another segment of We Nerd. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys again soon. Bye!